Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Once more, we would like to send our apologies for starting a little bit late. We are so privileged as University of Johannesburg Library to host this book discussion because it's in partnership with Penn Macmillan. So without a waste of time, because we're running out of time already, I would love to welcome Mr. Masekela to do the biography of the author. Please give a round of applause to Mr. Masekela.
Thank you. Bongani Madondo is that rare breed one finds in this chaotic and what I think is a beautiful global business of music. With a passionate and deep love of the sounds we call music, the musicians who create that music, and the story of that music, he takes his passion, with words articulates the emotional and spiritual place from whence the music comes. John Lennon once said in reference to songwriting, "I like it to be spiritual, from the spirit." It is from this place that Bongani operates. More important than factual accuracies are the emotional and spiritual environments that influence the music and the musicians. Strictly speaking, I suppose he could be called a critic, but I consider him more of a chronicler than a critic. A chronicler of South African and African diasporic musical experiences, reality and soul, and a chronicler of the spirit. With this book, I'm Not Your Weekend Special, Bongani has contributed an important and very solid brick to the foundation of our pop culture life and opened a way for others to follow. And I'd like to say to Bongani, thank you very much for this. I'm just going to dive right in and tell you my few experiences that I had with Brenda. I got to South Africa, well, just a little bit about who I am. I am Mabusha Masekela. You might be wondering, yes, Hugh Masekela is my uncle. More important than that, however, is that Barbara Masekela is my mother. And I've been here since '96, and I've always worked in the music industry, so once I got here, that's the place that I naturally gravitated to. I loved Brenda, but she also scared the living daylights out of me. She was really a scary person at times. And first time I met her was at a petrol station in Yeovil. And I don't really remember who I was with, but I remember Brenda, and I remember her energy. And it was like hot, razor edge, and I was very careful, stayed away. My first on-stage working experience with her was at the ICC concert in Mary Fitzgerald Square, March 2003. At this particular show, it transpired that Johnny Clegg was the only non-melanin skinned person performing in the lineup. He also had the longest performance time of anybody else. These facts caused much unarticulated backstage resentment and grumbling. Not a happy backstage. During Johnny's set, on his second to last song, Brenda, who was also performing, walked up on stage past the stage crew. She didn't go to Johnny's mic, she went to the background singers, sung a high harmony note that completely sapped all of the energy that Johnny had put into his performance, left the stage before the song ended with the spotlight on the background singers, came down the stairs and looked at all of us standing there, and all we could do was just applaud for her. I always wondered, how did she know the exact performance that would express the kind of unarticulated backstage emotions and simultaneously render impotent anyone's attempts to reprimand her for being a bad girl, and to seek her just due, not from the audience. She didn't go to the audience, she came to us, backstage crew and performers. How did she know how to do that? The next time I worked with Brenda on stage was at the AU-OAU Africa Day celebrations, May 2003, at Johannesburg Stadium. It was a really big Africa Day celebration. There were lots of dignitaries, ministers, prime ministers, presidents. It was a very complicated program. There was an official program. There was also a cultural program that included choirs and traditional dancers, and a very carefully choreographed collaboration piece with Jonas Gwangwa, Kaifa Semenya, Letambulu, Sibongile Kumalo, and Hugh Masekela. Of course, with that many things going on, we were running late. As stage manager, it was my duty to police the time. As Brenda walked up to the stage, I went to her and I reiterated the fact that it's very important that she stick to a 3-song set. She just kind of looked at me, kept on walking. Got on the stage and played the longest, but the longest intro that you've ever heard in your life. Started singing the first song that she was supposed to sing, and halfway through that song, stopped the band, and in what was, to me, the perfect gesture and the perfect expression, raised her right fist and started to sing Nkosi Sikelele Africa, which of course the entire stadium then joined her with. The next thing I knew, she was off the stage, over the security barriers, and on the pitch. Thinking it best not to be drawn, quartered, and lynched by the entire stadium, I let her do her thing. How did she know, with all the preparations, all the formal ideas that people had about what would happen on that day, that that would be exactly what the crowd would respond to? Exactly what the crowd, more than anybody else on that day, she connected with that crowd. The last time I worked with her was actually her last performance, her last stage performance. And she wasn't well, it was obvious. There was a crew on stage with an oxygen tank, so she wasn't okay. But she still came on stage in this one-piece catsuit, bright white lace, hugging her skin, and she still did splits, she sang, she had that crowd. Since that time, I've encountered Brenda in Timbuktu, on somebody's cell phone radio. We were in the cafe late at night, nobody really around, and in Timbuktu, are you going to hear Brenda Fassie? Well, yes you are. In Addis Ababa, the airport there, you go into the store, there's a whole line of Brenda Fassie CDs. Just the other day I was watching YouTube, and I was watching footage of present-day Liberia, and as a soundtrack, one of the songs that they used was Sumbulala. So Brenda sings for Africa, sings for everybody. And I think that she is probably one of the most special performers that I've ever encountered in my life. And yeah, that's how I met Brenda and worked with her at times. This is Bongani Madondo, the writer of this wonderful book. This is Janet Smith. She works at City Press. The Star. And we're just gonna talk about Brenda. When was the first time it occurred to you that this would be an important piece to get out?
I just want to say thank you so much for your presence. My name is Bongani Madondo, and I think we should go right into the book. What was the question?
The question was, what was the first time, or when was the first time, or what made you, what inspired you to imagine that this was a piece that had to get out there?
I've been living with, alongside, next to and away from Brenda Fassie, on and off, since I was the age of 13 or 14. I first met, in fact, when I want to impress people, I say, I met. No, I didn't meet Brenda. You didn't meet Brenda. Who am I to meet Brenda? I saw Brenda when I was 14. She came to my township. I'm from Hammanskraal, to those who know it. A windswept place, hard and hot, and nothing goes for it. Although now there's a mall and this and this and that. But back then, to be from Hammanskraal, it was either you die or you adapt. Brenda Fassie came to the local hall called Kudu Cinema. The cinema hall was the only place that something was happening, something that matters was happening at. That's where I first watched my Prince film, The Color People, and others. She came to perform there in 1983, immediately after she released an album called Weekend Special. And I think I was 13. Okay, I'm giving up my age. So I think I was 13, and I went there with a chap called Bra Frank. Bra Frank was my sort of village elder. He was friends with my mom, and my mom was much older than him. Don't ask me why. But he took me there, and Brenda Fassie came on stage, and everyone, I think I was the youngest in the entire hall. So we waited for like 2 hours. 2 hours. She was supposed to start at 8. At around 10, Brenda came on stage. No, she didn't. She floated, almost on some magic carpet. So back then, I don't know whether you know this, because I think it's a generational thing. The disco gigs of the time used to have this machine, smoke machine. And from the nozzle, there will be this smoke machine whistling off, all over the place. You know, it gave it some kind of pop rock attraction of the time. All the big stars used to do that. So Brenda came out of the smoke. It was magic. She came out of the smoke. Like, the smoke covered the hall, the stage, everything on the side of the stage, on the left and the right wings of the stage, and covered the curtains. But Brenda, we didn't see her coming. She just came out of the smoke, just like that. It was like, gee, this is something. She came out of the smoke. I don't know whether they were holding her or she was on some kind of raft. But she just stood like that until all the silence, until everyone kept quiet. And just before she sang, there was complete silence. And she sang the first note. The Big Dudes, she was with a band called the Big Dudes. They played the first 3 bars, and she played the first note. And before she went into the middle of the song, everyone, and I mean everyone except the men of the time. This is early 80s. You know, there were no metrosexuals and soft guys and nice considerate guys. The men were macho, panzula guys, tough, they'll give you a hot clap, you run. Completely. So they were the only ones who were pretending not to cry. Everyone else was crying. The ladies were sobbing. I was 13 and I looked around I pretended that I was in solidarity with them, so I sobbed. But the men knew that I was sobbing for real. They kept on like, man up. Hey, knock me, you know? And I it was amazing, man. It was completely amazing. And she started singing. You don't come around, see me. I can't sing. But she did that, and the entire hall stood up. Since then, since those first 2 minutes up to now, I've never managed to get Brenda off my head. That's a long answer. I've never managed to get Brenda off my head. I've had locks, I've cut them, I've had cheese scopes, I've had S-curls. I never managed to get her off my head. Ever. Around 1997, Brenda gave me a call. Around that time, nobody was writing anything about her, good or bad. They had written her off the narrative. Off. So Brenda used to do these things and come up with a great album, and they'll say, oh, it's a comeback. And then she'll get the money and do her stuff meaning her life, and we'll write her off. But there was a time when nobody was writing about her at all. Kwaito was at its peak. It was 1997. She was yesterday's news. She called me. She wanted a sympathetic ear. For 4 years, I've been trying to get hold of Brenda. She had nothing to do with it. She wanted nothing to speak. She just shut me out. But when everyone else was not writing about her, she called me to say, it's time. Come over to the studio. She was recording an album with a young producer called Goofy Pilar. And the album became known as Paparazzi. And then, so I started interviewing her there and there. And I don't know why, but I think she thought that she could manipulate me, because I was obedient and submissive and all that to her. And we built a relationship from then. In 1998, she invited me again. Oh, because the album Paparazzi flopped completely. It had a track featuring Papa Wemba, and it had a track that paid an ode, an elegy to Princess Diana. But the entire album flopped, and so again they wrote her off. And around 1998, she called me again. She was living in the city center, in a place called Bayern Center. She told me, I'm working on this little thing. I said, okay, well, let me come and check you out. She was running a school, a dance school for street children. Brenda loved kids. Brenda was a street kid. When she arrived in South Africa, she was a street kid. When she arrived in Johannesburg, she was a street kid. And she referred to herself as a street kid forever until the day she died. So she loved really, really, really street kids. In fact, her life in that way, for me, mirrors the life of the visual artist Basquiat, because he was a street kid, essentially. She invited me over, and she was doing this dance movement. The choreography was hot, was tight. I was like, Brenda's coming back here. And she gave me the master tape of what she was doing. She said, go listen to this. I don't know what's going to come out of it, and tell me. I was writing the story for the Sunday Independent. They had a lovely magazine called Sunday Live. I think it was edited by a guy called Daniel Ford in Cape Town. So I took the CD, the tape, it was a tape. It was a tape and a CD, I took them both. I went home, I lived in Berea North, just a street away from Mam Barbara Masikela's house. I listened to it, I couldn't sleep the entire night. I kept on putting on repeat. And I thought the cassette is going to break. I put on the CD. It was rough, it was not properly mixed, the mastering was bad, but the voice. There was a wedding song, there was a song for initiation, there was a song for a peace song that was mixed. Basically, there was a taxi war around that time, and Brenda intervened. The thing that made her great was that she was able to connect, like Mabusha says, with the people, the pain, the anxieties, and the desires of the people. And so there was a song that called Sumbula. I kept on putting it on. I knew when I listened to that song that I want to write a book about Brenda Fassie.
Why Brenda?
Well, I think, even for white people, Bongani and I are the same generation. And my first encounter with Brenda was also in 1983 at a huge concert at Ellis Park. At that time, we didn't have access to to that kind of free space. Johnny Clegg also played there, but that was the first time I saw Brenda and the Big Dudes, and I think that also changed my understanding of what my cultural life should be as a young South African rather than as a young white person. And so it was, it was a revelation when I became an arts writer to be able to be in her space in a different way, and to be able to access her in a different way, because journalists have you have a curious relationship with people who you interview, in the sense that you are allowed to talk to them about anything, and you are allowed to kind of, I suppose there's a, I was mentioning this to Mabusha because he's experienced this as a producer, but you have an intimacy with people which is sometimes very brief, and sometimes, like with Bongani, it lingers or it intensifies. And it's a real privilege as a journalist to have that kind of access to people. I think she was quite frightening. I think any journalist who interviewed her did it with trepidation. You had to do your research. Also, she didn't have any airs and graces, so she would do crazy things. She might jump up, she might disappear, she might sort of engage in an entirely different narrative, which I think people have written about in the book, to the one that you were imagining you might have. But even for white South Africans, I think Brenda remains emblematic of a period in our lives prior to democracy and post-democracy. And we were all very hurt and very sad when she died.
If you could both just tell me a little bit about your, if you have had, or what your experiences of Brenda outside of South Africa.
I used to meet Brenda at foreign airports. And every time she'd say to me, I never saw her perform out of South Africa. We just met at foreign airports. And she would say to me, how's the book coming? The book that she never gave me a single interview to do. It's like, okay, it's not coming, Brenda. She says, I'm an yes. And I said, but you're not giving me interviews. Then she says, I'm here, record it. She says, what do you want? Do you want me to sit down? Are you mad? You think Brenda Fassie can sit down? I don't sit down, I perform. And every time I meet her, I'd totally given up about writing the book. Until one day, it was fun, we both lived on and off in Yeovil. She really didn't have property in Yeovil, but she had friends at number 45 Minor Street. And I've seen one of her friends here, a friend, ex-manager, backup singer, and a dancer, a guy called Oscar Chumre, or Chumre. Oscar, you want to stand up and raise your hand so the people can see you? Yeah, that's Oscar. And so I think that day, or I assume she was coming from number 45. I met Brenda Fassie at 5:30 in the morning. Now someone used to say, someone said earlier that the younger days we used to do stuff that I wouldn't recommend to you guys. And I know I'm not saying anything because you guys do stuff that is really, really hardcore. So me saying don't stand up, don't stay all night, I'm saying nothing to you. So, but yes, back in Yeovil, we would go partying and everything after work, after hard work. And we wouldn't sleep. I had a friend called Arabi Muchek, he was my brother. And Eric Mien and all those, Yeovil had characters, basically. The characters that went on to impact on South Africa in the most astounding ways. So I met Brenda Fassie at 5 o'clock in the morning. I can't remember where I was going to, but she was going to the airport. She was with some young lady in the car, very beautiful SUV. And she said to me, hey, come here. She realized that I saw her, and I didn't want to show that I saw her. I don't want to let it, slip that I saw her. She called me, she says, and she asked me what time is it. I said, well, it's 5:15. She says, come with me. I said, where to? She says, we're going to Congo. Now, what? What are you smoking? Okay, sorry. What have you been eating? She hasn't slept the whole night. And she told me that she's rushing to the airport. She had a lover in Congo, a musician called Awilo something, a major rumba star or kwasa star. And she says I should go with her to the Congo. I said, I don't know the thing. She said, no, it will be sorted out at the airport. No, Brenda, you mad. But I went with them. We drove up to the airport. I think she was late by a good 30 minutes. I think the gates had closed. Now, everyone who had flown anywhere else knows that if you are late by 1 minute, the gates closed, they will never allow anyone. Brenda said to me, I will jump this gate if you don't open it right now. Right now. And so they opened the gate, and she was running, and she stopped right in the middle. She says, oh yeah, and you security guys, give my boy money to go back to your bed. Brenda in foreign lands in South Africa. I'll say this much.
Janice?
Well, you know, as I say, I mean, in '83 we were children really. So when you become an adult and you experience Brenda, I didn't see her, you know, in the flesh in other countries, but I've experienced her at parties all over the world, exactly as you've described. You know, in Kenya, Egypt, inevitably Brenda's music appears at markets. You still see her music there. Today, you know, as I think even in conflict zones, Brenda is ubiquitous. You know, wherever you go, and you realize that possibly your uncle, there are a number of people who occupy that same space. But I think there was a political edge to Brenda, and there was a Pan-Africanism to Brenda which we may not have properly explored. And she also carried South Africa into that space. You know, to some extent more freely than any political figures could do. At a time when others were banned and so on, Brenda was still out there speaking the things that needed to be heard.
I think I'd like to... Yeah, sure.
Before you go, I think he wants to open it up for the floor to ask questions. Before you go there, I think we need to just a bit look at the cultural, political, aesthetic, and overall aspect of the importance, the significance of Brenda, why Brenda matters. Why Brenda matters not only to my generation, but to the generation after me and the one after that generation. There are musicians who are great, they create beautiful music, they release the record, they make money, we love them for what they do. There are musicians that permeate their life, their work, their style, everything permeates all aspects of life. There are not a lot of them. John Lennon was one of them. There are not a lot of them. Miriam Makeba is one of them. Michael Jackson is one of them. There are not a lot. Brenda was at that level. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Aesthetically, in terms of style, I see young guys and young girls today having this punk look and mohawks and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, you guys are on point. But Brenda rocked that way 35 years ago. And not only that, she rocked African clothing and African aesthetic and style and kente and all of this African print long before the exiles came back and Africanism was in fashion through Thabo Mbeki. She did that long time ago, long before Winnie Mandela had those beautiful headgears that goes up to the sky. Brenda rocked those. Brenda rocked Pantsula Jive long time ago. She'd come with an all-star, Converse, yellow, purple, tights, and she had the punk leather, biker punk leather. And when she was coming back from, I think, the US or the UK, she had this ginger hairdo, short hair, and she had the letter B behind. And she rocked some of the greatest, hottest stanners. You know, when I say stanners, the new generation will understand. She had stanners, you know, goggles, like you can't believe. So Brenda was a style leader, aesthetically. She was able to synthesize township style with punk culture, Blondie, Debbie Harry, up to, you know, up to the Stones, up to Michael Jackson, up to whoever. If you remember very well, or maybe you've seen old pictures of those retro guys, they look funny. They had these shiny suits and they'll pull the sleeves like this, you know. And then they had pants and all that. Brenda rocked it way before that. So every style you think of, each and every style you think of, punk, pop, rock, gaily, Beyonce, she did it before. Cyndi Lauper, she did it before Cyndi Lauper became Cyndi Lauper. So you ask me, is Brenda Fassie the Madonna of South Africa? No ways. Madonna is the Brenda Fassie of the US. I'm not saying because I wrote the book, but you can go visually. You guys are up to, you have all this access to technology that we never had. Just go and do your YouTube search. Do your stuff, you're faster than us. And check the time, check the time frames. You can do an entire thesis on that. She was a style leader. Musically, if I start with it, I won't finish, but I'll just give you 3 examples. She was a rock star. not because of her style, but she was able to do a rock song, a pop song. She was a gospel star. She was an innovator of original township music that built from Bakanga. It built from Bakanga, it was not Bakanga. She mixed it with soul and funk. Listen to the beats. You know, when the Big Juice left Brenda Fassie in 1985, and she worked with the other band, and she worked with Step Ahead, we also thought she's going to go down, but she soared. Because the band was just playing second fiddle to her. They were key, they were important, but she was the conductor. So she created music styles that will live forever. Today, if you listen to Zahara, you cut out the whole religious aspect and nice girl image and everything. You listen to the voice. It's Brenda Fassie. Complete Brenda Fassie. You go back to Lebo Matosa, Brenda Fassie. You go back to Berida. You go back to Kende Mafura, Nomuntu Kapa, Yvonne Chaka Chaka. All of them. They had a little bit of Brenda in themselves. All of them. I dare you. So, politically as well, she's the first woman to create consciousness about bringing political discourse into the table. Now, I just want to finish it quickly and say why Brenda really matters. We're in the visual age. The visual age didn't start now. It started with the advent of television. Television came to South Africa in 1976. Most black people go into television around 79, 80, 81. So, unlike Miriam Makeba, Hugh Masekela, Margaret Mtingana, and all of those, Blessed Bridges, all of those, before them, Brenda Fassie came of age when television was coming of age in South Africa. So, like Michael Jackson became the major star for MTV, Brenda Fassie shaped the visual language of television in South Africa, both in popular culture and in stage performance. So she became a television star, and all of us watch television. We all remember the things that she did on television. Cinema tools and everything.
Can we take questions?
Sure. Sorry, man.
He's passionate about his subject.
All right. We can ask Bongani and members of the panel questions regarding Brenda Fassie's life.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mko Bunze. I'm a final year journalism student. One cannot help but give Brenda Fassie respect, even posthumously, because of her input and involvement in terms of music in South Africa and the entertainment industry. However, we could not miss her like in daily tabloids about ill activities such as drug use, sexuality and other issues. Now my question is, the first question actually, is do you think these controversies behind Brenda Fassie contributed towards her stardom? And if so, why? Secondly, do you think Brenda Fassie's music would have been relevant today? And the last one is, why now? We know that Brenda Fassie passed on 10 years ago. Why the book comes or surfaces now? Thanks.
Can I leave one of the answers to Janet?
Can we take the last?
Sure.
Maybe two. Is there anyone who wants to ask? I want to ask you something. I want to ask you.
Go ahead.
All right, Bongani, they say there are two important life events. They say it's when you were born and when you find out why you were born. When I look at Brenda Fassie's life, despite whatever that happened, a drug addict or what, I see someone who has found out why she came to the world, and she wanted to just give everything that she came up with in this world to everyone. So, under that note, I want to ask you, the first day when you said you experienced Brenda Fassie, why did you cry? And why do you think the people in that hall cried? Because despite anything, she just appeared, whether magically or what, she just appeared. but what do you think made everyone to cry there? And the second one will be that, what can today's musicians learn from Brenda Fassie's life?
I still wanna, is there another head?
So let's take some before we get to me, before we get back up. I would just like to address the one question that the young man asked about why now. South Africa has an amazing global presence musically, far more extensive than I think a lot of people would imagine. But in South Africa, there's nothing. There's nothing. African Jazz and Variety was one of the biggest shows to ever happen in South Africa and in Africa. Have you ever seen a book, an article, pictures? Do you know who the people were that were in African Jazz and Variety? King Kong, Wait a Minute, Sponono. There are so many cultural pieces that that South Africa has had great success with domestically, but also outside of the borders of South Africa. But the amount of information that South African people can get about South African music is minimal at best. I go to secondhand bookstores all the time. I've got a whole shelf devoted to the Rolling Stones. I've got a whole shelf devoted to the Beatles. I bought all of those books here. I didn't bring them with me. I've got all kinds of books on R&B, Roy Orbison, Hana. I can't find any books on Alan Seninga. I've never found a book on the Manhattan Brothers. I've never found a book on the penny whistle phenomena that took over South Africa international. So I think why now is because this is some of the most important information, especially for young people who are going to go out into what's called the globalized world. Because South Africa's opened up now. But if you're going to go into that globalized world only knowing about Diana Ross and Beyonce, you're going to do yourself a very, very serious disservice. Because outside there, in the world, they are asking about Miriam Makeba. They are asking about Brenda Fassie. And so this, as I said in the beginning, is a beginning step. It's a very important step. But really, I think that it's for anybody, you're a journalist, to research these while this stuff is still available. Find out about these things and put out books like this. Because this is how we're going to be able to go further out into the world knowing who we are and not imitating somebody else and saying, and they go, oh wow, yeah, that's pretty good, thanks, next. That's my